Welcome back to AR Tales. Today's story is about a man who thought he was building a future until his girlfriend called their relationship comfortable and admitted she wasn't in love anymore. As you listen, think about the moment you would have stopped trying. My name is Jude. I'm 30 and I was with Lena for 4 years. We moved in together 2 years ago, right after she finished grad school. For a long time, it felt steady in the best way, not perfect but real. We had routines that made life simple. I made coffee in the morning while she got ready for work. We split cooking. We watched shows on the couch most nights. On weekends, we'd hike, hit a farmer's market, or stay in bed late and talk about nothing important. That's why it took me too long to notice the shift, because nothing big happened at first. About 3 months ago, Lena started thanking me differently. When I cleaned the apartment on Saturday mornings like I always did, she smiled and said, "You're such a good roommate." Roommate, not boyfriend, not partner, roommate. At first I told myself it was just a word. People say weird things, people get busy, people get stressed. But then it happened again. I'd say love you, and instead of love you too, I'd get you're the best or thanks, babe. It wasn't cold exactly. It was softer, but also emptier. This is the kind of change that makes you feel crazy because nothing is technically wrong, but your body knows something is off. Our anniversary was coming up. 4 years felt like something you should mark. I suggested we do something special, a bed and breakfast in the mountains she'd mentioned months earlier. Somewhere quiet where we could reset. Lena looked at me with this expression that sat between guilt and relief, and she said, "Let's keep it low-key this year. I want to focus on myself more." I asked what she meant. She gave me a small smile and said she was working on personal growth. I didn't push. I thought I was being supportive. I thought space was what you give someone you love. Sometimes, space is just distance with a nicer name. After that, the distance kept creeping in. She started going to yoga classes that ran late. She went out with coworkers more often, coming home smelling like wine, apologizing for losing track of time. She was on her phone constantly, texting people I didn't know, tilting the screen away when I walked past. When I asked about her day, the answers got shorter. Work was fine. Class was good, nothing specific, nothing that invited me in. It felt like watching someone through glass. I could see her, but I couldn't reach her. I told myself I was paranoid. I told myself relationships change shape, and it doesn't always mean the worst. I told myself I didn't want to be the clingy guy who turns every mood into an interrogation. That was my first mistake, not asking for the truth when I could still handle it. One Sunday morning, I was under the bathroom sink trying to fix a leak. The pipe was dripping into a small bowl, and I had my tools spread out on a towel. Lena walked in, leaned against the doorframe, and watched me work like she was waiting for a good moment to speak. Then she said, "Can I tell you something without you getting upset?" I looked up. Water dripped off my hand. I said, "Sure." She didn't wait for me to stand up or put the wrench down. She said, "You're my favorite person, but I don't think I'm in love with you anymore. I feel like I'm living with my best friend, not my boyfriend." The words didn't hit like a slap. They landed heavy, like someone quietly setting a weight on your chest and walking away. I wiped my hands on the towel, nodded once, and said, "That actually explains a lot." She blinked like she'd been ready for a fight and didn't know what to do with calm. "What do you mean?" she asked. I stood up, walked into the living room, and went to my desk. I opened my laptop and pulled up my email. There it was, the confirmation for a cabin rental I'd booked 2 weeks earlier. The same weekend I had been planning to propose. I didn't say that part out loud. I didn't need to. I just stared at the reservation for a second, then clicked cancel. Lena stood in the hallway watching me like she couldn't tell if I was joking. I had imagined that weekend so clearly, a hike up to an overlook at sunset, telling her she was my person. Getting down on one knee and asking her to marry me. The ring wasn't in my car. It wasn't hidden in some clever place. It was in the kitchen drawer under the cutlery tray, next to the bottle opener. I'd put it there a month earlier, right around the time the distance started, like part of me already knew I might need to hide it from my own hope. I walked to the kitchen, opened the drawer, and took out the ring box. I held it for a moment. Then I put it back, slid the drawer shut, and listened to the soft sound of it closing. It felt final, not dramatic, just final. Lena asked, "What are you doing?" I said, adjusting expectations. She looked confused and for a second almost hurt. But I didn't explain more. I didn't have the energy to beg for love from someone who already moved on. Here's the hard truth. When someone tells you they don't love you the way you love them, arguing won't fix it. It just turns your dignity into a debate. The days after that were quiet, no screaming, no huge breakup scene. Just the slow acceptance that I'd been living inside a relationship that ended weeks ago. Later that week, I was folding laundry in the other room while Lena was on the phone with a friend. The door was open. Her call was on speaker while she did her nails. Her friend asked, "How did Jude take it?" Lena said, "He took it so well, it's kind of crazy. I thought he would cry or something." Her friend laughed and said, "Maybe he never loved you that much to begin with." Lena laughed too. Not a deep laugh, more like an awkward one, like she wasn't sure if it was funny or mean, but I knew what it was. It was permission. A moment where she got to feel like the good guy, and I was the one who didn't care that much. Something in me clicked off right then. Whatever fragile hope I still had, whatever part of me was waiting for her to say, "I'm scared but I want us," disappeared. That's the second mistake people make. They think closure is a conversation. Sometimes closure is overhearing the truth when someone thinks you can't hear it. So I started making changes. Not loud ones, not dramatic ones, practical ones. The next morning I made coffee for one person. Me. When Lena came into the kitchen and asked where hers was, I said, "I figured you could make your own since we're just roommates now." She looked annoyed, but she didn't argue. Over the next few days, I went through our shared expenses and made a spreadsheet. Rent, utilities, internet, groceries. Everything split down the middle. I canceled the subscriptions we shared, streaming services, meal kits, our joint gym membership. I sent her the breakdown and said we should each handle our own accounts moving forward. She called me petty. I said, "I'm just being accurate." A lot of people think boundaries are angry. Most real boundaries are boring. They look like spreadsheets, separate accounts, and one cup of coffee. People online told me to leave immediately. I understood why. But we had a lease until March, and breaking it would cost thousands. Neither of us could afford that on short notice. So I stayed. But I stopped pretending. I reorganized the apartment to make it clear we were living separate lives. I moved my clothes out of our shared closet and into the guest room. I took my books off the shared shelf and put them in my space. I even rearranged the living room so the couch faced a different direction. Lena noticed. One night she asked, "Why are you acting weird?" I said, "I'm not acting weird. I'm treating us the way you described us. Best friends who live together." She stared at me for a long time and then said, "You're being petty." I didn't respond. Because the truth is, when someone changes the rules of your life, they don't get to complain that you followed them. A few days later, Lena's sister Tess stopped by. Tess and I had always gotten along. She was 3 years older than Lena, more grounded, less obsessed with appearances. She brought over some boxes Lena had left at their parents' house and then stayed for coffee. We sat at the kitchen table and Tess asked how I was holding up. I said, "I'm fine, just adjusting." She looked at me like she was deciding whether to cross a line. Then she said, "Can I tell you something, off the record?" I nodded. She said, "Lena found the ring, months ago." My stomach dropped so hard it felt like the floor moved. Tess told me Lena had been looking for batteries in that kitchen drawer around Christmas. She saw the ring box. She opened it. She panicked. She called Tess freaking out, saying she wasn't ready to get married, but she didn't want to lose me either. "So she decided to have that conversation before you could ask," Tess said. "It wasn't honesty, it was damage control." And suddenly the timeline made sense. The distance. The roommate comments, the low-key anniversary talk, the personal growth excuse, it all started right after the holidays. I asked Tess, "Why are you telling me this?" She said, "Because you deserve to know. And because I think she's handling this horribly. She doesn't get to have it both ways." After Tess left, I sat alone in the kitchen staring at that drawer. I thought about all the times Lena asked what I was thinking and I said, nothing, because I didn't want to look insecure. I thought about how hard I worked to keep her happy and how the relationship slowly became me maintaining her comfort instead of building a life together. That night, I moved the ring box from the kitchen drawer to my desk drawer, not as a symbol, just as a fact, out of her space, into mine. Lena's birthday was the following week. Every year I did something thoughtful, a surprise dinner, a concert. Something that made her feel seen. This year I bought her a candle, a simple candle from the store down the street. I put it in a gift bag with a handwritten card that said, "Hope this year brings you clarity." On her birthday morning, she came into the kitchen while I was making breakfast for myself. She looked at the single plate and asked if I was making her anything. I said, "I figured you could make your own." She looked hurt. I kept my face neutral. Later, she opened the gift and read the card. When she looked up, her eyes were wet. "This is it," she said. "This is all I get," I said. "It seems appropriate." She called me cruel. I said, "I'm just being honest. Here's the part people don't like. When someone downgrades your love, they still want the benefits of your care. They just don't want the responsibility of returning it." That weekend, Lena decided to throw her own birthday party. She invited friends over to our apartment. I stayed because it was my apartment too, but I kept to myself. I sat in a corner with a drink, watching everyone celebrate like nothing was happening. Around midnight, when people were loud and drunk, one of Lena's friends, a girl named Maya, someone I never liked, said something that sliced through the noise. "You totally told us you were scared he was going to propose," Maya said, laughing. "Remember, you were freaking out about it." The room went quiet. Lena's face went pale. She tried to laugh it off, saying Maya was drunk and confused, but Maya kept going. "No, I remember. You said you found the ring and didn't know how to tell him you weren't ready." Someone else murmured, "Oh my God." I finished my drink, stood up, and walked to my room. Lena called after me, but I didn't turn around. It wasn't new information. Tess had already told me, but hearing it out loud in front of her friends made it real in a different way. Like the last excuse burned up. The next morning, I woke up to notifications. Lena had posted on Instagram late at night a photo of her blowing out candles with a caption that said, "Sometimes love changes form, and that is okay." The comments were chaos. People who knew us asked what happened. Some asked if we broke up. Someone wrote, "Wait, were you not living with your fiancé?" By noon, she deleted it. But it was too late. Her calm, mature, we're consciously uncoupling image cracked, and people could see the mess underneath. Tess texted me later that day. She said Lena had called her crying, asking why I was being so cold. And Tess told her, "You broke his heart before he even asked the question. What did you expect?" After that, Lena tried to act like nothing happened. She went back to yoga, brunches, her normal routine, like we were still the friendly roommates she wanted the world to see. But the cracks kept spreading. Some of her friends started pulling away. A few reached out to me privately and said they had no idea she'd been so careless about the whole thing. A couple even apologized for taking her side at first. I kept my distance. I worked from home most days, so I stayed in my room with the door closed. When we crossed paths, I was polite but brief. No small talk. No, "How was your day?" No pretending. I treated her like a roommate I barely knew. She hated it. I could tell by the way she kept finding reasons to be in the same room. She'd sit on the couch while I watched TV, even though she'd set up a TV in her room. She'd cook dinner and offer me some, and I'd say no every time. She wanted a reaction, any reaction. I didn't give her one. Then she got sick. Just a bad cold, nothing serious, but she texted me asking if I could pick up medicine from the pharmacy. I rated and replied, "DoorDash delivers faster than I do. Feel better soon." No reply. An hour later, I heard her on the phone complaining to someone, probably her mom, about how cold I'd become. I put on my headphones and kept working. A few days after that, Tess came by again. This time she didn't stay for coffee. She went straight to Lena's room and closed the door. I could hear them arguing through the wall. Tess's voice was sharp. She wasn't holding back. When Tess came out, she looked tired. I asked if everything was okay. She said, "Lena finally admitted it. She told me she didn't want to marry you, but she didn't want to lose you either. She wanted to keep you around without the commitment. She thought she could have it both ways. I nodded because of course she did. This is the third mistake people make. They think love is proven by how much they tolerate, but tolerance is not a vow and it's not a life plan. That night, Lena tried to talk to me for real. She came into the kitchen while I was making dinner and stood in the doorway. "Can we talk?" she asked. I kept chopping vegetables. "About what?" "About us, about everything." I finally looked at her. "There is no us," I said. "You made that clear months ago." She started crying. I didn't expect it. Not because she never cried, but because she'd been so careful to act like she was fine, like this was mature and mutual. She said she had made a mistake. She said she was scared and confused. She said she didn't realize what she was giving up until it was gone. She said she still loved me. She reached for my hand and I stepped back. "But you don't love me the way I loved you," I said. "You love the idea of me. You love having someone who cooks and fixes things and makes your life easier. But you don't love me enough to commit. You don't love me enough to stay." She tried to argue. I held up my hand. "I'm done, Lena," I said. "I'm not trying to punish you. I'm just done. You wanted to focus on yourself, so go focus on yourself." She left the kitchen. I heard her door close. Then I heard her crying through the wall. I went back to making dinner. A week later, I told her I was ending the lease early. Yes, it would cost money. Yes, it would be inconvenient. But I had saved enough and I was ready to move on. I started looking at places and found a small house outside Portland. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, a yard, and a garage I could turn into a workspace. When I told Lena, she panicked. She couldn't afford the apartment on her own. She didn't have a plan. I told her she had 2 months to figure it out. That was fair. She accused me of abandoning her. I reminded her calmly, "You ended this, not me." The day I signed the lease, I started packing. I boxed up books, clothes, kitchen supplies. I left her the couch because I never liked it. I left the living room TV because I was buying a new one anyway. I didn't say it out loud, but in my head, each thing I left behind felt like a goodbye to the version of my life that revolved around keeping someone comfortable. On my last day in the apartment, Lena tried one more time. "Can we at least stay friends?" she asked. I looked at her and said, "Comfort was never the problem. You just confused love with maintenance." She didn't have a response. I loaded the last box into my car and left. The house outside Portland has been everything I needed. It's quiet here, away from the noise. I planted tomatoes and herbs in the yard. I turned the garage into a workspace and started doing freelance design again, the kind of work I used to stay up late for because I actually cared. I wake up early, make coffee for one person, and the silence doesn't feel lonely. It feels like peace. I haven't spoken to Lena since I moved out. I blocked her number and her social media, not out of anger. I did it because I needed a clean break. Through friends, I heard she had to move back in with her parents. Apparently, she tried to find a roommate to replace my half of the lease, but it didn't work out. I also heard she started a podcast about emotional growth and relationships, which would be funny if it wasn't so sad. I don't feel vindictive. I don't take pleasure in her struggling. I just feel nothing. And that surprised me the most. For months, I thought I'd be furious. I thought I'd miss her every day. I thought I'd replay every conversation until it bruised. But when I think of her now, it feels like thinking about a chapter I already finished. Tess and I still talk sometimes. She apologized on behalf of her family. I told her she didn't need to apologize for someone else's choices. She said Lena asks about me sometimes, wondering how I'm doing. Tess doesn't tell her anything. She told me. Lena made her bed. Now she has to lie in it. A few months ago, I met someone new. Her name is Harper. She's a civil engineer. We met on a hiking trail near my house. It was early on a Saturday morning. She was sitting on a bench at the trailhead tightening her boots, and we started talking. First about the trail, then about work, then about life. She told me she'd recently gotten out of a long relationship that felt more like a habit than a partnership. I told her I understood that feeling. After the hike, she asked if I wanted to grab coffee. I said yes. We've been seeing each other for a few months now, and it's different in a way that feels simple. Harper is direct. She says what she means. She doesn't play games with words. There's no guessing, no decoding, no trying to prove my worth by being useful. Last week, we were sitting on my porch after dinner, watching the sun set through the trees. She turned to me and said, "I don't do almost. Either it's something or it's nothing. I don't have the energy for in between anymore." I smiled and said, "Same." And I meant it, because I spent 4 years in a relationship that slowly turned into maintenance. I tried to keep someone interested by making life easy for them. I shrank myself into a support system instead of standing fully as a partner. I stopped doing things I enjoyed because she wasn't interested. I saw friends less because she didn't like them. I stopped making plans because I was always waiting to see what she wanted first. I don't do that anymore. With Harper, I still hike on Saturday mornings. I still work late when inspiration hits. I still see my friends. Harper has her own life too. We come together because we want to, not because we need someone to keep the machine running. That's what I learned. Love should not feel like maintenance. It should not feel like you're constantly proving you're worthy of staying. It should feel like two people choosing each other every day. Not because it's convenient, not because it's comfortable. Because it's real. I don't know if Harper is the person I'll spend the rest of my life with. It's still early, but I do know this feels different. This feels right. Lesson 1: if someone starts turning your love into a convenience, pay attention. The words change before the life does. Lesson 2: space is healthy, but silence is not. If you feel like you're living with a stranger, you deserve a real conversation. Lesson 3: a breakup can happen long before anyone says the words. Sometimes you're just the last one to find out. Lesson 4: boundaries aren't revenge. They're clarity. You don't have to keep giving benefits to someone who chose not to be your partner. Lesson 5: real love is not almost. It's not half in and half out. It's two people choosing each other on purpose. What would you have done when Lena first started calling him a roommate? Would you have confronted it right away, or would you have waited like Jude did? And if you've ever been in a relationship that slowly turned into maintenance, how did you know it was time to leave?